Specifics, when you look at the rules and regulations, what specifically do you think went too far, maybe needs to be corrected, whether it be corrected through opening up the process again, which I know you don't agree with, but in the natural kind of time frame, what ought to be addressed?
I think there were certain rules that were applied to the entire state of Colorado that really had application to one basin, maybe down in the San Juan Basin or the Piceance Basin, and then you would apply them to the Denver-Julesburg Basin. Those kinds of issues, what to do with produced water, and sometimes this isn't even oil and gas regulations, but as part of the Department of Health. But we visited some ranchers down down near Trinidad, and they had for 15 years been producing water, using produced water from gas wells for their livestock and for their hay with no adverse results. The production company was willing to measure the quality of the water as it came out at every outpoint place, and yet the state was now coming in and saying that they had to put that water back in the ground. Well, the farmers, the ranchers were upset by it. The production company was upset by it. I'm not sure who gained. And those are the places where I think you need to bring everyone together and say, wait a second, I mean, we want to hold ourselves to the highest environmental standards, right? We want to be a model of how good rules can work, but we don't want to have any, red tape and just needless waste.
Talk about environmental standards. Where were you on the measure that came through the legislature to transform the coal plants to natural gas?
I supported that. I think I look at the issues around the quality of our air, and not just the present environmental standards, but looking forward, they're going to become increasingly stricter. And coal, for whatever reason, is a fuel that puts out a lot of emissions, a lot of particulates. And gas has the benefit of being remarkably clean. Obviously, it's a little more expensive, but that balances out over a period of time. If you look at the incredible costs and consequences of having dirty air, I think that you're going to come very close to balancing out the cost, if not actually having natural gas come out cheaper.
When you talk about balance, what is the balance if you were elected between advocating for the renewable sector as opposed to the traditional fossil fuel sector?
Well, I'm agnostic on which fuel. Obviously, hydrocarbons aren't going to last forever, so at some point we're going to make this transition. The question is how rapidly and what kinds of subsidies or incentives are provided. I look at and I wouldn't just limit it to wind and solar. I think you need to look at hydrothermal. You should probably be looking at nuclear. I mean, go down through the entire list of possible energy sources and say, all right, what are the pros, what are the consequences? Try and take the whole picture of cost benefit and where you get the best value long term. Because some of these things, we need to make an additional investment now so that we have a smoother transition as our energy picture evolves.
You just mentioned nuclear. There are folks I know in this state who would talk about how we've had a checkered history with uranium mining in particular. I guess, is that something that your administration would, the president has talked about a move toward nuclear as well. Is that something that Colorado would be welcome to, or welcoming to?
Again, I'm agnostic. I would look to any energy source, and I include nuclear. I say the same qualities. We look at, when I was talking about frac fluids, I mean, I think frac fluids, the issues around fracking are some of the highest risk to the industry. If you were going to try and really ratchet down the industry dramatically, let's put a 6-month moratorium on frac fluids, people go crazy. It's insane, and yet that's what some people in Washington are talking about. I think we have to hold ourselves on the surface to high standards in how we move frac fluids and make sure we don't have surface spills or pollution. Same thing with radioactive materials. If we're going to mine them, we have to make darn sure we're not letting that radioactive material get in the air. But if they can demonstrate and convince us that they're going to hold themselves to the highest environmental standards, we should certainly look at it.
From a severance tax standpoint, I mean, increase necessary, decrease necessary? How does that play into kind of the budget deficit right now?
Well, we have, and one of the things I'd love to work on, I said it a little bit that I got between school and work, I had about 10 years in the supply side of oil and gas. I'd love to get 10 years into the demand side. And that includes how do we get more stations along I-70, I-25, even 285 that can use compressed natural gas? How can we look at other states and allow them to be making the same transformations from coal-burning power plants into natural gas power-burning plants? I mean, that's persuasion and sales. I think those issues begin having real relevance if you can put them together, in a comprehensive way.
Do you feel that this audience sees maybe your party and is leery of what you're here to talking about today?
You are talking specifically about the 74 people that have talked to me and asked me, why are you a Democrat? You know, I have run the city as a nonpartisan, right? And we have parties, and our political system requires parties. I was never involved in, I mean, the first time I ever ran for any office was when I ran for mayor. I was never involved to any significant extent with either party. I was a Democrat. My mother, all my aunts and uncles were Republicans. My mother was a single mom and raised all four of us, and somehow she believed in opportunity, and she was a very fiscally conservative Democrat, and she raised, much to my grandparents and my aunts and uncles' chagrin, she raised 4 Democrats. Am I what everybody looks at as a good Democrat? I mean, city government is smaller, it's more effective. I'm not sure that's Democratic or Republican. People ask, have I appointed as many Republicans as Democrats to my cabinet, to my administration? I have no idea. Never asked who's Republican, who's a Democrat. What we've tried to do is bring good government and business, right? We try to make, it's easy to say you're going to have the state government be more responsive to industry concerns, but it takes changing a culture, right? Just like a business, a government culture has to be managed and motivated by professional managers, and that's not political appointments. That's appointing people that understand management.
We have time for the last question. You've addressed it a little bit, but I'll ask it more bluntly even. Do you believe hydraulic fracturing should continue to be regulated as it currently is at the state level?
I should have saved that till the end if I'd been smart. Obviously, I think fracking is one of those things that it works, it's safe, and we have looked. I've tried to find an example anywhere in Colorado where there's ever clear groundwater contamination that came as a result of fracking. I've seen spills on the surface, but no groundwater contamination due to the frack, and yet it's a miracle. You look at the number of reservoirs that we would not be able to produce from, both oil and gas. Fracking has extended the life of our petroleum industry dramatically in the state, and to have it managed at the federal level would be a terrible mistake.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Hickenlooper. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'll turn it now back over to Tisha.
Okay, please join me in thanking all of our 3 gubernatorial candidates, one of whom will be our next governor. And Adam Schrager, he didn't let anyone get off the hook. Didn't he do a fabulous job? Let's give a very warm appreciation. Okay, just a couple quick housekeeping items. Webcast of this event, if you didn't get enough seeing it here the first time, will be available on the Energy Epicenter website next week. We would like to thank Halliburton again for sponsoring this luncheon and for all their efforts to do grassroots outreach within the industry. After this, the RMAG technical session will begin at 1:15 in the 200s corridor upstairs. COGA session 2 on hydraulic fracturing, if you'd like to know more, will begin at 1 p.m., so that's 5 minutes ago, just so you know, in the 400s corridor, also upstairs. And then, of course, I see quite a festive bunch here. We look forward to seeing you tonight at our opening party at 6 p.m. Thank you all so much for coming, and let's just hear it for Colorado's natural gas industry.